Good day. She is Friday, the 20th of December, 2019. This is Tim Gillio, and the rest of the story. The name of today's episode is Indigenous People Are Waking. You're in control now. Now, we had a conversation today with a gentleman who's his job is economic development for Native Band, and it seems like he's doing a really good job from what I understand. I mean, there are issues there's always issues. The thing about dealing with service companies is there's always an issue. Not that I wouldn't know. I've only controlled one for too long, but when we start looking at the native issue, the native bands. I mean, of course, we went back. I think we discussed this back about 6 months ago, if not more, when we first started this. That what we were going to do was we went to the industry, and there was a problem with corporate welfare, and we said, well, there's another way to get corporate welfare and deal with some of the Indigenous issues at the same time, right? I mean, the Indigenous interest or issues are incorporating them into the fold or into the business atmosphere. We at the same time we had guys like me, that had built a lot of service companies. That all of a sudden our service companies were going belly up because there was no work. We're selling things at the auction for 10 cents on the dollar, and most of them are by and large are going south or over to Saudi Arabia or places like that. It's pretty good when you can buy all your assets for 10 cents on the dollar. That's a hell of a great thing. The problem is in Canada, we always seem to be the ones stuck selling the assets at 10 cents on the dollar. Every time we get a Trudeau involved, we end up selling our assets for 10 cents on the dollar. Well, when our business wants to scale up again, how do you scale up? You don't scale up at 10 cents on the dollar. So the idea was to get the natives to go to the government under the Indian Act and under the investment capital that's there for them, and go and buy up these mobile assets, particularly these assets that we're going to need, that the industry would need. So that now that the industry's coming back, we have some of these assets. They're not they didn't all just go disappear. So I've seen a couple different examples of different bands and the way they're doing it. Some bands are just buying the equipment and leasing it back. The band like I was talking to today, they're actually actively building their own oil field service company, and they've got quite a few tentacles out there, so they're doing a pretty good job. Now, one of the things that they're interested in, everybody's interested in, is contracts, of course, but I've always shied away from them because they have a tendency to bite you in the butt. But they like long-term contracts, which is fine. I mean, I approach them over the pressure testing. Now, the pressure testing for BOPs in that aspect, that needs a lot of training. I mean, my operator, who's worked in every aspect of the field, so he's agreed to go with the truck. That's his baby, it's his truck, which in a way has two advantages for me. Is it ensures that somebody's going to get trained properly. I mean, I trained him, so I assume he's going to train somebody properly. Other than myself, he's the only one who actually knows how to operate that truck. Matter of fact, he's operated more than I have since the rebuild. So when we rebuilt that truck and did the video 2 years ago on the Birchcliff site, that was interesting. Birchcliff was generous enough to let us come and try it out. The consultant, I won't say his name because it would be rude. Actually, this particular consultant, we're going to get into it without saying his name. He knows who he is when he watches these. We had a little interesting lead from him. He's the one who gave me the lead on, or gave me the idea about phoning this native band, giving their economic development officer a call. So we did that, and then today I said, well, he wanted a little bit more information because there's two things that can happen here. It's either you can just take the pressure truck himself and the operator, and we can slowly help him build a full-scale pressure testing business around the rest of their businesses, because I mean they have a lot of the other aspects of the business already going, so it's a good fit for them. The other way we can do this is we can bring him in, and it's more with the letter that he's involved in, so he understands the depth of what we're doing. We can bring him in on the ground floor, in which case, he won't be on the ground floor. He's 17 years late for that, but they'll be in a good position, right? They'll assist us, we'll assist them. This goes along with one of the approaches I've just made to Eagle Spirit Pipeline, or Eagle Spirit Energy. Now, the guy that started Eagle Spirit Energy, for instance, that was a guy by the name of Calvin Helene. Now, Calvin Helene is an author and an entrepreneur from the Salish Nation. So Calvin had me and Calvin actually have a connection that I didn't know about until I got looking at him there a couple of days ago. And before I sent the letter, I remembered back in the 90s we had a famous native artist by the name of Bill, and Bill had, he had built the flight patch for. It was his design, and he created the flight patch for a Canadian astronaut by the name of Thirsk, Robert Thirsk, a West Coast astronaut. So Bill had come, and Bill, we were doing a video, and Bill needed some assistance, and we needed to, he had a front row seat for the Space Shuttle Columbia takeoff, which Bill Thirsk or Robert Thirsk was going on, and his name was Bill Helene. I went, well, this is interesting. I mean, this is we're talking 23 years ago. It's a long time ago. So 23 years ago, we're bringing this, thinking about it, and I went, I'm just going to mention this because I mean, I was just a big blonde-haired guy, the vice president. My brother was the head of it, but of that particular organization. I helped build it. I did development back, the same stuff as I'm doing here with the field service management system. So Bill got they got they got a trip down to watch the space shuttle take off. I mean, watch his patch go into space with his son. Luckily for them, the space shuttle didn't crash for another 8 years. That was the one that blew up on re-entry of the Space Shuttle Columbia. So there's kind of a lot of weird things going on there. So I was going, this is kind of interesting. So I'm about to send him a letter, and as I'm researching the Eagle Spirit pipeline, I mean, I knew that they had gone across to Hyder, Alaska, which is just a little tiny spit of a town, 80-some residents. One point between there and Stewart, BC, they were beside each other, had a population in the area about 10,000 people, when they had lots of active mines. So, but they got smart to try to get around the C-48 ban. That okay, we'll just go buy property over here, which they've done, and now they've got the Alaska government is on side. So I figured, I do contact the White House quite often for different things. I figured, this is probably a good mix to contact the White House over some other issues, especially we've dealt with issues in relationship to China on a couple different reasons. And the China thing was kind of back there been back in the paper a little bit, and I figured, this is probably a good idea for maybe Trump to support this pipeline. I mean, they need his permission to cross that, that 6 centimeters of soil, whatever it is, from one border to the other. But they eventually need his signature on it. But this would be a good one for Trump to probably for President Trump to probably support. So I wrote a letter down to the White House about it. But before I did that, I said, okay, let's look at what else who else is involved. And so I phoned back my consultant and I was talking to him about it and telling him this coincidence between the cousin and the person who founded this and the cousin that are, I think it's a pretty weird coincidence. I mean, it's just the type of relationship we had. So I figured that's kind of interesting. So he said, well, I know a guy. And he said he's involved with it. His last name's Snyder. I can't remember his first name off the top of my head right now, but he says, I know him. He's involved with it. It turns out, yes, he's the new chairman and the chairman of it, the CEO. He said, yeah. He said, I used to hang out with him quite a bit in Calgary. He said, and he always tried to get me to go work for him. He's got stuff all over the world. And I went, well, that's good. Right, so there we go. I mean, when you have one coincidence, one thing, two coincidences, something else, I mean, pretty soon you end up with 3 or 4 coincidences. I mean, at some point, when does a coincidence stop being a coincidence? So I decided, that was a good idea. It's probably the right direction to go. I like the idea of the Eagle Spirit pipeline. One of the things I like about it versus Northern Gateway. When Northern Gateway was first proposed, I actually heard about it and I was in a discussion about it at the oil show in the Calgary Stampede grounds. And I moved into Tumbler Ridge, 2001. So I don't live there anymore, but I moved into Tumbler Ridge December 2001. And I went and I had a few meetings with the powers that be in that local area about Northern Gateway because I knew it was going to go through there. And discovered that was probably the worst group of moronic retards I'd ever met in my life at that time. So we'll leave it at that. But here you have a town where I won't even get into it. It was pretty disgusting. Today it's a pretty nice town. They kicked most of the idiots out, so it's back to being a pretty good place. So here we are. Years later, the Northern Gateway pipeline went through brutality to finally get approved. It gets approved, And then Trudeau gets in and creates this Bill C-48. Now, here's the interesting thing: is there's a moratorium on drilling out the west coast of Canada. So I mean, there's no such moratorium in Washington State, Oregon State, California, or Alaska, but there is a west coast of Canada. So it's kind of like how the taker traffic, which is the inside passage, which shares with Canada back and forth from Valdez, Alaska, constantly. That's kind of an interesting one. So somehow Canadian oil only is going to contaminate. So I mean, if you're into that silly stupidity, right? Well, then you know what? I should sell you a bridge. I could use some money right now. So as you notice, I haven't shaved for a while. Yeah, it's Christmas. One wants to shave. I look like Santa Claus. Yeah, now so we turned around. What we've done with with this discussion today is I kind of give this guy an introduction. While we were, it's Friday. It's Friday, so we generally around Friday we send a letter off to Cap anyhow, and plus, I won't see the Christmas will come by, so I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, because I probably won't send them another letter till after New Year's. At the same time, the premiers, we've kind of started to bring them in because they were latecomers. We didn't bring them in until right before the election in September. Again, that had to do with some other issues that were going on. So, now the premiers are in, they're trying to play catch up. So, it's kind of filling in the blanks for them at the same time. And this gentleman, it's giving him a quick little guide down to what some of the topics we've covered and some of the breadth of the whole program. And when you're dealing with something that's been going on for 17 years, and it's designed as a control system, I mean, because they have run a safety company, they understand how the control system works, how they're actually part and parcel of our program. So some of the things they don't understand is there are ways that we can ensure restitution, ensure that we get paid. And that was one of the things very important in here is one of the things that my partners, I'm always the face of this, but there's still people that own part of this. And one of the things that they insisted on, I'll be seeing one of them here in a couple of days. And one of the things he insisted on was pretty simple. He said, you can't hurt the workers. He said, you can go crazy, but you can't hurt the workers. And what he means by hurting the workers, you can't do something that causes the industry stress that you're going to hurt the workers. The workers have already been hurt. So, I mean, the good news about light, we're in a position where I didn't need reminding, but they remind me anyhow. When we created the field service management system, when it started out, the idea was to help the industry, help the workers, create a position where liabilities weren't an issue because we were operating at a higher efficiencies and at a safer and more environmentally astute level. At the same time, by putting our brains together, we figured out a way to make it pay for itself and increase the profits and the efficiencies. So that was kind of the point of it, the idea was to help. And if the system started out with the idea to help, no matter what negative connotations of an extortion network that's doing all sorts of stuff, we didn't do that. So like my partner said, he said, we didn't do that. So it's been my hold back on, even though I can go ahead and I can do I can do the class action suit, but in the end that just ends up hurting everybody. It's there, it's available, it's fair, as in restitution if that's what you're worried about. That's fair. I mean, we can do we can go to the environmental groups and let them slam the hell out of the industry. Well, that's not going to help anybody. That's just going to hurt everybody. We can go ahead and we can use media. I mean, media loves stories like this, but again, we shy away from the media, not only because we have a lot of experience with the media, it's because we know intimately how corrupt they are, but it's also because again, we don't want to shed negative light or negative connotations on what's going on. The industry's slowly starting to come back, and it's now it's just a matter of how can we improve it? How can we keep it coming? How can we improve it? How can we ensure stability so we lose these up and down cycles? Now we can say, okay, we can wait on the big guy next door, Mr. Trump, to file his executive orders and his releases, his sealed indictments and arrest everybody, and it's going to hurt. There's going to be a lot of people in Canada going to get taken out of those things. 2 years ago when I started talking about that stuff, I was the crazy guy. And now I'm becoming less and less the crazy guy, and everybody talks about it becoming less and less crazy, and they're becoming more and more. People are starting to wake up to it too. So there's a lot of things going on. And when they happen, it's going to be a lot of scared people. And again, it reminds me we're back to the same problem. it is sometimes nice to say "I told you so," but basically it's then you're just being a dick. So when people are waking up and people are scared, you got to try to help them, and that's what we're trying to do here. So we're trying to say, okay, these are the issues that are here. These are what we've said. I mean, we've gone to the industry and we've CC'd the government and said, look, so we have the environmentalist groups like to pick on things that they call corporate welfare. We know corporate welfare exists in many different forms and functions. But when it comes to the oil and gas industry, one of the ways that we can accept corporate welfare is if we accept it through, we had our native investment funds used to buy up the mobile equipment assets or the assets of the oil and gas industry that we're getting sold for pennies on the dollar, right? And they're going south. I mean, that's great for their industry. That's great for Saudi Arabia's industry. So I mean, that was a great use of mobile assets or of the investment, the corporate welfare. At the same time, it brought the natives into en masse into the industry, or the native bands. And some have chosen just to be owners. Or owners and lease the equipment back. I've seen that a couple times now. Some have been active, so they're actively in the industry, pursuing contracts, pursuing the bread and butter methodology of succeeding in business, which means now you're subject to the highs and lows. And the problem with taking that, they're looking at the long-term contracts. That was one of the conversations we had today. And it's not that I disagree totally with long-term term contracts. The problem is when you get stuck into a long-term contract. So you're stuck in one, right? You only have so many assets. So much equipment assets. You only have so many workers. Somebody like, say, myself hasn't taken out a contract. You can't keep up, so they call me in to fill in. I charge double or triple what you're charging because you're stuck in a long-term contract. They need it done. I understand that their static time is going to eat up more than anything I can charge. So next thing you know, I'm busy, if not busier than you, but at the same time, because I'm available for anybody that calls. But at the same time, we're also almost getting paid more, which means now I can afford to pay my workers more, which means I'm going to cherry pick your workers, your industry, your business is going to start to suffer because of it. And it's kind of, it's a cycle I've seen many times, because I've seen the cycle. It's not because I'm talking out of my backside, it's because I've actually seen the cycle, seen what happens. So one of the reasons that when we built the field service system, is we put that into the management profile. How can we manage that out of the industry and try to stabilize the industry as a whole? So one of the ways we did it is we said, okay, how about we track the assets? We track the equipment. So we, back when we come up with that, there were some problems we had to deal with. So they required a lot of lobbying, and they went into law in the U.S. last year. So they went to law last year, which was 11 years after we started lobbying it. And this year they'll be January 1st. They go in here. So, January 1st for law here. That's of course that's an electronic logbook, but it's not the electronic logbook that that's the reasoning or the theology, I guess you could say, of why you need to do this. The real reason is it allowed us to provide a platform which we can glean the data that's coming off of that electronic logbook, as in your time, date, where you're at, where you worked last, and there's lots of reasons for it. And they go on to another, what's called a GIC system, or GIS system, Geographical Information System. So the Geographical Information System allows me to stack different layers of information. It goes back to a letter that we wrote in September 15, 2003, where we put together the different technologies that were required at the time. Some of them were very new and emerging, and most people didn't understand them. Today, they're so commonplace that you use them every day, you don't even realize you use them. So that tells you the problem with being in business for 17 years is you come up with a lot of interesting concepts that take time to prove out. When they prove themselves out, it's like, well, everybody already knew that. Well, the reality is none of you knew it. So, that's what you're paying for. That's what intellectual property is the fact that this stuff was written down long before anybody ever started using it. So when somebody comes along and says, well, no, I said, well, it's pretty simple. Just prove that you knew about it before I did. Now, we had an issue with TELUS on one thing back in 2001 where we were writing something, and TELUS come back out and backdated their paperwork. It was in 2003. We noticed that they were calling out date on, that they were first in it, so they were a little disagreement over copyright on it. So it turned out that we'd screenshot their page, and then they changed their page. So, changed their information. We had the screenshot, sent them a copy of it, and I'm not saying they did it, but conveniently I got broke into in the home tower that we used. It also had a technology from an earlier project in it. It got taken, but the brand new laptop sitting there, they got left alone. So I guess you can win some ways, sometimes you lose, but it wasn't a fight that I wanted to go die on anyhow. That wasn't the hill I was looking to die on. So what we ended up doing instead, we just kind of ignored that, carried on with what we needed to do. And a lot of what became the field service management system or anchor tracks, a lot of the stuff we went through was when people were calling out in desperation, or these different larger businesses because of TELUS's mess ups, which they had a lot of. Some of them even got to the point where they involved military aspect of communication during the Afghanistan war, where we'd submit to the government our proposals, not understanding fully that they weren't going to let us do them, but we'd have the guys I was involved with engineer it for them, send it off so that they could go ahead and give it to TELUS. Canada's a corrupt nation. I mean, don't get yourself wrong. We've been corrupt for a long, long, long time. But it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. Since 2007, the corruption in Canada has got absolutely asinine. So what you see going on today is pretty basic stuff. So one of the reasons I go down into the States where we send this information to is because since Trump's been around, I mean, he's been the only guy talking about justice and fairness. And the executive order, when the executive order came out 2 years ago tomorrow, which is my birthday tomorrow. So I call it my birthday present because when this executive order came out, I actually got a letter from or an email back from President Trump, signed by him on a different matter altogether, which had to do with believe it or not, it had to do with Facebook. Well, they'd annoyed me, and I let them have it. But anyhow, so they ended up being that following January and February. They ended up being quite entertaining. But before that, I got this letter. So I was looking at the Trump side, or at the government side, and just so happens they were signing this executive order. So I got reading the executive order and got into it, and it was pretty interesting. The executive order was on the confiscation of assets of anybody involved in human rights abuses, any group or individual involved in human rights abuses or corruption. And the caveats on it were awesome. I mean, they were really specific to anybody having any relationship with the U.S. in any way at all. Which, if you understand that 98% of all trade dollar goes to the U.S., it's pretty much everybody has something to do with the U.S. So then they turned around. They did a few things that I thought were kind of cool. Is they give you an appendix, and on the appendix, and when they first came out, was the name of 20 people. Not a single one was American, but they already were stripping their assets going after them. Some very, very well-heeled people around the world. A lot of people involved with governments. And that's where that was the one kicker of this thing. They really, if you had anything to do with government, and that's where the government has a warning right now. If they have anything to do with government, and they're at least a bit corrupt, and that's what we did with our field service management system. We said, look, this went on with field service management system. Then went down. This went on with Platinum Passport. This went on with Lifestyle Leisure Service. This went on with Platinum Travel. This went on. We went down a list of litany of things. This went on John's Technology. I mean, it was basically okay here. I mean, I don't know how much they'll investigate or how many people they're going to get, but I'll tell you what. It felt good to at least have somebody you can go, you could deposit that information into. Now, as far as field service management system, because of the nature of the way the business works, they're trying to paste and copy the same type of safety and environmental controls into the U.S. Because in reality, they create red tape, and everybody that deals with them, it's a big joke. It doesn't matter who you are in the industry. They're clerical and administrative red tape. That we are. Our government and our industry can say we are the safest, cleanest oil. You know what? We are by attrition, but the reality as far as our safety stuff goes, it's all crap, right? So, nothing personal, but that's just kind of the way it works. Now, we did offer a system, and we still do, that, they've used the force part of it, but they never used the features and benefits that made people want to join it. When you make somebody want to do something, rather than force them to. As soon as you force somebody to do something, you get the hairs in the back of the neck and you get a fight. Some people say, okay, it's fine, then I'm just going to rape you. Force me to do it, I'm going to rape you. So that's why all of a sudden your costs are going through the roof. Nobody gives a shit. Why? Because it's not an industry. It's not a partnership. It's not cooperation. And that's what's happened in our industry. We've browbeat everybody right? We bankrupted them, and those that are left, then we continue to assault them, right? We continue to rape them, and this is where the native bands have an opportunity to come in. So I don't want them to walk into that same situation, because that's what's going to happen to them. So I mean, this is what's going to happen. You're going to get in, you're going to get to a certain size, you're going to take these contracts, that's what you're after. Why? Because it makes it seem like you're going to have all the work. Your workers aren't going to be able to keep up, or they're going to find some reason you're going to call racism, but they're going to say, no, it wasn't racism. They're going to prove to you that your workers are inefficient. Why are your workers inefficient? Because you've spent so much time growing that you haven't spent time learning your business. So you've grown very quickly, right? You haven't got no way of checking the efficiencies of your workers. You didn't put the systems in place to do so. That's what part of field service management system does, so it can do that for everybody instead of just one group. Now what happens is we look back, and all of a sudden, it's smoking busy. They're hiring guys like me at 3 times the dollar. Why? Because I'm available. You're sitting in the corner. Your machine's broke down. You can't afford to fix it anymore. Why? Because you don't have the money to fix it. We came into this problem. I mean, one of my partners who does another type of the engineering and computer software portion of the industry. Well, he called me up one day with a cement company that their equipment was coming off warranty. They started out with a big boom bang, huge tons of money come in, all brand new equipment. Now it's all coming off warranty. Their maintenance and repair costs were higher than the profit margin. So how can we get this adjusted? So that was an interesting one that we had to tackle back then. Again, they had TELUS in the door, and TELUS wasn't providing solutions. So we come in, instead of fighting with TELUS, and we'll just provide the solutions when we were looking for the bigger picture, not the smaller picture. At the same time, it was by the time TELUS was done with raping these guys, nobody had any money left. They were really leery about putting out money. TELUS would come in and say they could do something they couldn't. Sometimes it was as simple as, when it came to road maintenance, they were using optical sensors. The problem with optical sensors in snow and sand and salt, what do you think the problem is? They can't see, they're blind, right? So we just replaced our optical sensors with magnetic sensors, and that was it. That was the end of the problem. TELUS walked away from the deal, took the money, sorry, right? Bye, see you later, sucker. So, I mean, that type of crap, right? That goes on in the industry. It's going to get worse. All of a sudden, you're not going to be able to pay for your equipment. You're not going to be able to keep up to the maintenance. You're definitely not going to be able to buy, whatever you set your rates at. You're not going to be able to buy new equipment. If you went to the auction, and if you just popped your whole company based on auction rates, trust me, when things get busy, the auction rates get pretty high. Pretty soon you're paying damn near the same rate as you might as well go buy new. The reason you're buying a vac truck or a water truck or a pressure truck at the auction at that point isn't because you're getting a deal. It's because you're getting a system that's almost ready to go to work or ready to go to work. So that's those are the changes that, if you haven't been in the industry, been around long enough, that you're going to see coming. Now with the field service management system, the idea is that we can adjust those changes, or we can scale the industry up or down, and keep it fair for everybody, so we can keep more players in the business. And that's kind of where we're at now. The problem with the industry, again, is the industry is not really interested at this point. I mean, the people that are running the safety program, whether it be the core program, whether it be the core program is owned by the government, it's administered by WCB, which is legislated by the government, therefore it's a quasi-government organization. That's a for-profit private industry. That the safety training or safety development course is taught through it's taught through, in this case, it was in Form now it's Escape, Energy Safety Canada. They teach the course, which is authorized by the government and then administered and audited by WCB, that you need to get your course certificate so that you can go ahead and then you can apply into your ComplyWorks or ISN, so you can keep paying money so people can keep checking up with them when you're doing your due diligence. Gee, that's great, except what's the benefit in it? Oh, I had it. Well, before all I do is go buy it. If I didn't have it, it was my house going. So here we got a Big Brother system. The problem with that Big Brother system is right now all the people they can't scale up. Right? I'm sitting there with a truck. I can go to work. I'm sitting there with the only damn truck that's regulatory compliance truck in the industry, sitting right out the door. It can't go to work. Why? Because I let my safety program lapse. Why? Because there's no money. I got tired of shelling out money year after year after year without getting any back, or not enough back. Then I'm competing with guys that are willing to drop the rate to nothing because they're going to go for cash flow. So, I wasn't into doing that. I said, okay, let's go back after what we know we own, which is the field service management system. Let's go back after trying to develop the back end of the rest of the compliance network. So the compliance network still needs a back end developed. So it still needs the website, and it still needs it still needs the GIS system installed in the website. So I mean, do I have people for that? Oh yes. I mean, actually, I have a company that wanted to buy it out for $15 million back in 2006, and I said no, just that portion of it. So I mean, they're still around. Do I want to sell it to them? No, not really. Do I want them to do the work? Yeah, they got about 100 and some engineers that can knock it out in a couple of weeks. So that's kind of the easy way to do it. I've done this in the past. I kind of know what I want. I mean, I'm used to working with engineers. When engineers say they can't do something, I'm not an engineer. I've developed and engineered a lot of things that my engineers have had to build that worked. The things that said they couldn't work, like digital compression and on video cards and different things. Flexible solar panels. Another one we did. We did wireless pan and tilt that Pelco uses for their wireless pan and tilt, focus and zoom on their camera systems, the remote camera systems that are along the roads. You can thank me for that one. We've done a lot of other different weird things. Tons of them. There's lots of them out there. We got to manipulate with one of my programmers, a guy by the name of Jimmy Morrison. Jimmy Morrison did his company was called Jaws Technology. Jimmy got it in the backside really hard when he was 25 years old from some of Alberta's finest. I'm not talking about the police here. I'm talking about our business community, which has a tendency to be pretty corrupt. So we kind of know that. So we're not too kind of used to it. But Jimmy also held their hand because he had the government's encryption for their security systems. He developed it. So that wasn't just Canadian government. That was U.S. and British. So the guy couldn't even go anywhere. Here they bankrupt the poor guy, and then he needs permission to walk across the street. So that was kind of an interesting one. But we come up with the program we're working on, it was an engineering project that was on a golf course, because the relationship between, if you could solve the problems on this golf course, you can pretty much solve a lot of problems related to different engineering challenges. One of them, of course, is what we recognize today is one of the challenges was optical censoring or triangulation with a single camera. So there was a program being worked on in the United States, in the University of Seattle, that we got into, and we kind of messed around with that a little bit, made a few advancements on it, gave it back to them, and but that project shortly came to an end, not much longer after that. It was a lot of money and a lot of time, and we had a gentleman show up and steal it, and he disguised himself as a venture capital company. We'd already had a few $1 million in. We had 3 law firms, 2 in Canada, 1 in the U.S. that were actually partners. This venture capital guy just happened to make a lot more money than all of us combined, and he said, "Yeah, I'm taking it. You can sue me, and I'll see you in." He said, "Yeah, I'll see you in court in about 100 years." He said, "So here." He brings his lawyer and his accountant along, and says, "Here's my finances going back for a couple of years. Go ahead, take a look." So by the time they were done researching, they said, "Yeah, he's pretty much makes about $248,000 a day." So yeah, he can afford at this point, and it's growing. So it's kind of a difficult guy to go after. So that was one. That was the second out of 2 very negative ones. One was on the verge of doing an IPO for a public company that Mr. Horgan, Premier Horgan, knows all about, and Premier Notley does likewise. Which today is the premier travel, the way people travel around the world, the way they use travel agencies, they use travel. So that would have been a Canadian-based business that it was tied into an airline, or a verging airline that was about to collapse, and then we were going to throw it in the IPO. And what transpired over a very corrupt government, a corrupt government, corrupt business again. I mean, in Canada, it's when this thing turns around, which is going to turn around fairly quickly. This thing in the States happens. When they're not going to stop. I mean, that was the example we sent to the industry. What just happened in Mexico, the USMCA, when the president of Mexico decided, well, I'm not going to sign this thing. I decided I don't like the changes. The changes weren't that bad. They were just basically over labor rights or for workers' rights. He didn't want to sign it all of a sudden, and for Pelosi to sign it. So President Trump said, that's fine. We'll send a team down there and we'll negotiate. Well, I sent a team down there. At that time, we had True Dildo up here. As soon as the president of Mexico started waffling, and True Dildo up here sort of decided he was going to start waffling. So that I don't think was a good idea, because next thing you know, they send down a team to go have a little conversation with the president of Mexico. They arrest the top law enforcement agent in Mexico who looks after the military and the state police, or the federal police. His job is more specific to arresting these cartels and busting these cartels. Said he gets arrested by the Americans and drugged right back across. Because remember the Americans made the drug cartels a criminal or terrorist organization now, so they have different rules. They don't have to wait for extradition anymore. So they bring this guy back. He's tied to this president. He's tied to the past president. He's tied to the president of the last 20 years. So there's a saying that when does a bird sing? Well, generally when he's put in a cage. So you can guarantee this guy's singing. Sealed indictment, if you don't know what that is, or an indictment. Indictment means that he's gone up against a grand jury. The charges have been presented to the jury, to a panel of judges. They've weighed the charges, and they found that there's enough evidence, or preponderance of evidence, that chances are you'll be found guilty. They don't know your name. They don't know who you are. They just know what the evidence is, and so they issue an indictment. If it's a sealed indictment, then again it's sealed. Nobody ever knows who you are until they unseal it. So the reason they don't unseal them is because generally when they're kept sealed, that means that there's more people that they're waiting to catch in. They say the average sealed indictment has 9 people in it. There's 140,000 sealed and 350,000 non-sealed indictments sitting right now. So when they start doing mass arrests, by the time you're looking at it, if you multiply that by 9, you're going to get close to 5 million people. That's a lot of bureaucrats to arrest, eh? What do you think? I know it's all going to be bureaucrats, but it's going to be a few of them. So anyhow, it's going to be interesting, because that's going to spread out. That's not just going to be, it's not just going to stay in the U.S. It's going to be around the world. So, it's that's kind of where we're at. The native groups, I've proposed to them to join us in this field service management system. It's one of the things, if they apply the field service management system, they apply the tracking system to anybody working on their land, not only their land or their indigenous places, are they safer? Not only are they more secure, and not only do you know who's there, where they are, when they're there, what they're doing, but it also ensures a little bit more stability in your oil field service business. It ensures that you're working with people. You're not browbeating them or jumping on top of them. It ensures that they have cooperation. That everybody out there is a steward of the environment, and everybody's focused on health and safety. We take away, because of the accountability, we take away the pressure of what's going on above our heads. The people sitting in the nice, warm, 72-degree office that they're looking out the window, hoping their secretary gives them a glance. We don't have to worry about these people's opinions or when they want to play God. All right? It's a nice way of doing business. We're back to working together and working as a cooperative team, not just. We're not working opposed to the oil and gas industry. We're working with the oil and gas industry. We become the oil and gas industry again. We're back to looking after the community, looking after each other. It doesn't matter whether you're white, black, native, non-native. This is the way they worked when I was a kid. I'm white to you. I have native relatives, but I'm a throwback, obviously. So they used to call me the Big Swede. You can. One guess, it's up to you. But anyhow, other than that, I've asked you guys to take a look at this. I've tried to give you a little bit more information. The field service management system is pretty basic. I'm going to send you a copy of the Field Service Management 3 with Anchor Track. It's, I believe it's 67 pages, a marketing plan. I'll try to get that. I'm not going to get it up tonight or tomorrow, because tomorrow's my birthday, of course, so and probably not even the next day, but I'll try the next day. Take a look at that. I'll give you some of these letters so you understand the relationship. If we go back to the original letter, like I talked about, not the very original, but one of the letters I talked about, back in September 15th, 2003. The good information about that is you can actually look at the networks that weren't really available back then, or you wouldn't have known about, that I knew about, but its relationship to the type of technology that I was playing with and the things that we were doing back then. So there you go. It's pretty basic stuff. I got a ton of experience wherever you want to apply it, but I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to opening up to getting this communication going with this Eagle Spirit pipeline group, Eagle Spirit Energy. From there, we're going to start probably processing some more native bands to try to bring them in as partners. Not just on the pressure truck. The pressure truck, that's like I said, that's a truck, but on the greater network, the greater system itself. The more we get, the more control the control we put into the indigenous population. The more the indigenous people have the ability to mass together, right, and ensure that that the environment's protected, the workers are protected. Doesn't matter what color you are, as long as we got somebody up there that's taking that precaution out. So then hopefully we can stabilize the industry a little bit. Do all the things that we designed this field service management for in the first place, which is for it was for the health and safety of the environment, but it was for ensuring efficiencies, ensuring that the right person's in the right job because they earn that job, because they deserve it, because they're good at it, not because of your brother, your sister, your auntie, your uncle, or your best friend who's willing to lie for you. So if you're in a position where you shouldn't be, right, is field service management a threat to you? It's a damn threat to everybody. I mean, right now the oil and gas industry is so full of cliques. These little cliques are all surrounded by their yes men, so that there's always a victim. They always find somebody on the outside. So as soon as they screw up, bingo, he did it. Right? It's always look over there. And you got all your buddies and your cliques to prove it out. We've gone out of our way this year to say to the oil and gas industry, look, there's some simple ways to do it. So let's go back to some very basic free technology. Free. And you guys, whether you're watching this and you're running an oil field service business, doesn't matter if you're non-native, you're native, who you are, you give your guys a book. Just one of them little tiny hardcover books with the inserts. You buy them at the same place you get your pens and stuff. You take that book, right? You give him a pen, and every day you want him writing in that book. That's his ledger. Every day, what'd you do today? Who'd you talk to? What were you told? Who told you to do what? Right? And if that becomes his Bible, and he does that every day, pretty soon he's going to end up with a stack of these things. And if something happens to him, or something happens and he's there, and all of a sudden the finger gets pointed at him, if he's been doing these diligently, and they do them diligently, what happens? Not only do they become the reference, his reference material to go forward in his career because of the things he's learning, but it also becomes his safety net. Now, as far as what I try to teach management and people in positions of management, you call me up today or I call you up tomorrow, and I say, yeah, I want you to go over there and don't worry, test that one, but don't worry about shutting that valve, right? Or don't worry about bleeding off the pressure, just open it up. I've kind of mentioned that because, of course, we had a pipeline blow up. My nephew was part of it. He was tied up in that. He only ended up with a broken arm. The other guy, his buddy, ended up burnt up pretty bad. He was in the hospital for a long time. So there's 4 of them that were injured in that incident. But here's the problem: is that as soon as something happens in anywhere, I mean, this industry is no different than anybody else. As soon as something happens, it becomes a he said, she said show. He said, she said, he said, she said, he said, she said. I didn't do that. He did that. No, he did that. And it just goes back and forth and back and forth. The he said, she said show. So you got to remember that becomes the idea behind field service management system and accountability is we get rid of the he said, she said show. We can see what's happening. We know who said what, where, when, right? But until that's instituted, right? Until we gain the efficiencies through it, what I want you guys to do. If you're in a position of authority and somebody above you calls you up and says, hey, just go do this. I'll give an example. Another example, one of my consultants years ago phoned up. Actually, it was 2003. It was kind of an interesting year, that one. He phones up and he says, he phones my boss. We knew each other, but we used to work across from each other on the drilling rigs. But he phones up my boss and he says, they want me to drill without a diverter. What do you think? He said, well, I'll have Tim call you. So I call him up and I said, don't do it. I said, huh? He said, yeah, but I need a job. I just want consulting. I said, well, you were looking for a job when you got this one? Yep. I said, well, you'll probably get another one looking for it too. I said, but here's the problem. I said, if you do what they say and something happens, you're liable, and your liability insurance is not going to cover that cost, which means you're done the rest of your life. If somebody dies, you're really finished. So what do? I said, get it in writing. I said, so, just tell your boss. So they phone him up, threaten him. I spent 4 hours goofing around before they give it to him in writing. They finally gave it to him in writing to go ahead without a diverter. This is an area that we just finished. A few weeks before that, we had a rig that caught fire doing exactly the same thing in the same formation, just over about 60 miles. Killed a guy. Derrick Ham was up the derrick, couldn't get out of it. Got beaten to death and fell out of the derrick. But saying it doesn't matter, it was cause and effect, but this guy did the same thing. This rig was on his third well, brand new rig. He did what he was told, right? Well, 20 minutes later, they had a brand new rig burned down. So, he spent quite a few years off and on producing that email. His lawyers having to produce that email. It still cost him lawyers to defend himself, but it didn't destroy him. So what I suggest to people is, don't even get in an argument with somebody. Somebody phones you up and says, yeah, go ahead, drill out that diverter, go ahead, do whatever. If you think that that's a little suspect or the liability, it's too risky, you don't want to take the risk, you don't want to assume the risk, which you shouldn't assume risk anyhow. All you do is just simply, nowadays we have computers, we have emails. I want you to email the person back saying, now just to make sure that I got your directions correctly, and then email him what he said. Now what happens is the person's either going to respond yes or no, right? And if he doesn't want it recorded, or he is trying to trap you, or he just realizes that what he just asked you to do was retarded, you've given him an opportunity to look at his command again, and B, if he doesn't want it, if he doesn't insist you do it, then he'll just going to say, yeah, go ahead. In which case, if it does happen, you've got it. This was a command. You're following orders. So, and you've given him ample opportunity to rescind the order. So if you do that, you'll keep yourself safe. I believe that's just what happened on our recent frac blowout here. That again, now they're looking at the office. So obviously, somebody in the office gave a command. Somebody got smart enough to make sure there was a paper trail attached to that command. And when things happen, now it's back in their lap. So that's where we're kind of at. I look forward to sitting down with these native guys. Most people that know me know. Years ago I used to like crowds, but now I can't stand them. I don't like going out with people too often. I've talked to my guy Roy, and Roy's a better communicator than I am. He understands the program quite well, so he'll probably be the guy that will go to Calgary if there's any issues. I'll write the programs. I'll write the back end information. You guys can probably go to Calgary together and negotiate it. And we'll go from there. So I'm going to leave that at that today. KR, your initials. So who I'm talking to. This was built for you. Primarily give you a little bit more of a wake up. The letter today, when the guys from the government look at this today, it's pretty much the same which was in the letter. Just you get to look at my ugly face instead. So. Anyhow, I'm going to let that go out there. Merry Christmas, guys. For my, my subscribers and the people that watch the show, and the people that participate on the rest of the story on Facebook and on YouTube. Thank you very much. It's been a good year. We're going to try to keep it up. This year I've got off a little bit. By the time this one loads up, it'll be tomorrow by the time I go and actually load it. And so it'll be the 21st. It'll be my birthday while I was loading. So I want you guys to, if you have topics, you guys, we've got off this topic a few times where we got into the separation and that type of stuff, how that would work, or how we thought it would work, or I'm not above putting in my 2 cents on anything. What the hell? I have 2 cents, right? That's about all I got, but I probably don't have 2 cents. Didn't they burn those things? Who knows? Anyhow, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's.